We're back. Welcome to Season 5 of Welcome to Plathville. If you know my material before, I went through all the previous seasons and made some reflections from a Christian and a psychological counseling perspective on some dynamics and the family relationships of the Plathvilles. Some things they do very well, some things not so well, as all of us families are. So I want to do some more reflections for Season 5. I hope you enjoy them. Don't forget, I'm not here making fun of them or judging them, but I am talking about interdynamics. And my hope and my prayer is that we can learn from what we see on TV to make our own lives healthier. So here we go.
I was considering marriage mostly because I just thought the first person you have feelings for is the person you have to marry. I mean, that's what my parents raised us to think. But
okay, so if his parents really did teach him that, that's very unfortunate. That's not a Christian thing. So if you're not a Christian, you hear that, please don't think for one second that in the Christian worldview, you're supposed to marry the first person for whom you have feelings. That is silly and dangerous. I mean, that would be crazy. We're not supposed to be naive. Jesus said that explicitly. He gave a metaphor. But anyway, let's don't do that. So here's what else he says.
I'm not ready to settle down because I have so much freedom ahead of me and so much time.
Do you ever feel like your upbringing that was so strict?
Yeah, interesting. Freedom ahead of me. That's another thing that many people, when they think about marriage, they think of marriage as something that chains you down. And that's not in the Christian worldview. We don't think marriage is going to prison. I'm married. I think I'm very free.
About relationships and what was appropriate and what wasn't. Do you ever feel like that's almost a hindrance now when it comes to realizing that, like, it's okay to be young and date?
Yeah. My parents always just said, like, God will show you the one you're supposed to marry. And I don't doubt that, but I don't believe it's going to come without dating.
I look back when I was your age and I was so...
Very briefly, in the New Testament, nothing is said about how a person comes to find your spouse. Not at all. And though there are strands within Christianity that think it's bad to date and you shouldn't date, there's no reason to think that. I mean, at all. There's nothing in the New Testament that says dating is immoral or sinful or that it is moral at all. All through most of the other parts of the world that's not Western, they've had arranged marriages. Like today in India, they call it marriage and then love marriage. But many parts of the world it's been that way. Ancient Greeks and Roman had arranged marriages, but they were particularly amongst the nobility. It was the Roman Empire that chiefly introduced, to the Western world, it influenced all the way to this very day our concept of choosing someone on your own. And the Romans they were very adamant that the government should have nothing to do with that. I wish we had that today, but we don't. But all that to say, they very much valued having compassion and love and loyalty to a person because you chose them. Okay, that's the Roman Empire that influenced in the West how we do it. But it's not a Christian thing, because the Christian worldview says nothing about that. Whether it's arranged or you choose your love or whatever, it's nothing about that. So is it true that Christians can date? Well, of course they can. It's just Christians ought to have Christian healthy boundaries, and we can say more about that at another time. But we don't go into dating with doing all things married people do. Christians are not supposed to do that. We're supposed to treat people as siblings, basically, until you get married. Because that's who you're especially marrying, ideally, hopefully marrying a Christian, of course. And then does God tell you? Well, he sure can. And there are Christians who think that we sit around and wait on God to just kind of give it to us out of nowhere, and he sure can do that. But for most people, that's just not true. Dating is that opportunity in a healthy boundary sense where you're able to get to know a person and you get to grow your own character, you get to learn what you like about another person, and you do that for the intention of getting married one day. You don't date for the intention of having sex or doing sexual things. You're doing it in the intention of getting married. So there's no doubt that, and I know enough about the Plathvilles know that they grew up in a very, very particular kind of fundamentalist, almost cult-like religious experience. And so if you're not a Christian, please don't think for one second that the views that you hear through this are indicative of Christianity in general.
Entrenched in, like, everything I was taught.
And I don't let so much like what my parents taught me, at least anymore. It took a lot to grow that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But,
and that's what I meant, like,
yeah.
that period.
I really want to see Micah and Mariah do well.
She does something often, and people do this in the real world. She does this often, and that is she has her own issues and her own growing. By the end of the season, you'll see this a lot more, but this growing, profound, almost compulsion to rebel against the seemingly tyrannical view of childhood. And so she's talking about it, just having conversation, and that's cool. That's cool to just have conversation. But she's also doing it in such a way that when people go through this and they feel their own kind of compulsion about something, to get away from something, to flee it, or to adopt something, they tend to bleed over to other people. So instead of asking him how he feels and what he's thinking, she's immediately going, I mean, what I did, I've done that. And she's looking at me, I, me. And of course, he takes that by implication. Me neither. But he doesn't have to have that view. He could say, good for you. So you're freed from the shackles of your past. I don't want to be free from my shackles. All I'm saying is sometimes people do that. Of course, what they really want is validation. So what she's really looking for here is to save him from the pain she's feeling, which is fine, but it's just better, healthier communications when you say that up front. You might say, I know I'm treating you like a big sister here, but I love you very much, and I love you much because of that. I encourage you X, Y, Z, but not by implication. It can feel a little bit manipulative when people do that.
And I don't want them to make the same mistakes that Ethan and I made. We just both grew up in an environment where we really couldn't think for ourselves, and that carried over into our dating life as well, where everybody made all the choices for us. Like my in-laws and my parents made all of our choices for us and what we were and were not allowed to do. And it just isn't healthy.
I agree. All the choices for them, that is not healthy. I agree.
Kissing before marriage. Yep. No sex before marriage.
Practically
Like
no looking before marriage.
Yeah, almost down to that.
One time my mom saw me kiss Olivia like on the cheek, and she came up to me afterwards and was like, you were like this close to her lips. And so stuff like that makes it even more awkward, you know.
No touching, no feelings before marriage.
Part of the reason why Ethan and I got married so young was because we were so tired of all the restrictions. We weren't allowed to text each other until we got engaged. When we first started dating, we were allowed to talk on the phone for 1 hour every 3 months. Like, it was really stupid. And that's part of the reason why we got married so quickly, because we were just like, screw that.
There's a quote that I love that says, a strong woman can do it all by herself, but a good man won't let her. So it's just like, you gotta be doing it all alone, but somebody that loves you that much will just like be right there for you.
Hearing so many things
My siblings, I want to move slow and maximize relationships so that we don't make the same mistakes and end up losing something special.
I think, like, even for Ethan and I.
Yeah, that's good. It's amazing how people have such reaction to their past. So what's the thing that's very common to all the children, they often talk about being free and not making the same mistakes and freedom. And that's very sad. It's unfortunate they grew up in a household for whom that was true, that they had so few options. And that's just very, very sad. And the second thing here, she says, we're going to move slow. I think she meant slowly, so that we don't make the same mistakes as other people. I think there's certainly wisdom in that, because the average Christian would say you do want to move it slowly because you're not in a hurry, unless you just, as Paul says to the Corinthians, unless you're just burning with passion, then you need to get married. But it's not just the slow that makes it healthy. It's that you're doing it in healthy manners. And that's why I need to read books like Boundaries in Dating by Cloud Townsend. Boundaries in Dating. I recommend that to everybody who's dating, adults, children, everybody if they're dating. So it's not just that you're going slowly. You can go slowly and do it wrong. It's that you do it appropriately and with proper boundaries and healthy boundaries and healthy destination or goals in mind and communication.
Oh, I don't know about this.
You ready?
Guess as much as I'll ever be. Tomorrow, Ethan, Mariah, and I are moving out of Cairo, and before we go, I want to stop by Barry and Kim's and kind of just tie up loose ends there. Maybe I shouldn't do this. I'm kind of second guessing this right now.
See, this is a perfect example when you're anticipating, this is dread, you are anticipating something going very poorly. You stay in your child ego state, and that's exactly what she's doing now. So in these moments, if I were counseling her, I would say that I'm talking to your child right now. I'm hearing your child. Why am I doing this? I probably shouldn't do this. Why am I doing this? What's going on? Why am I doing this? In that sense of the child ego state. So when she's saying that, of course, to Ethan, she wants him to counsel her, to nurture her, to give her validation. And that dynamic of parent-child relationship is, in small doses, can be okay if you're being nurturing, but in general, healthy marriages are not predicated upon a parent-child relationship. So let's see what he says. If he nurtures her or fusses or dismisses, we'll see.
Because it's time to close the chapter and move on.
I had Mariah put false lashes on because I was
Pretty
like,
good.
I know I'm gonna cry.
Another child ego state. So ideally, if he were being very nurturing, he gave a reason why we're going to bring in closure and it's going to be over with. But ideally, what she needs to hear is, you can do it. You are not going to danger. I will not let anybody hurt you. You're not going to be hurt. You're not going to danger. You're not going to a crazy madman's house. Now, yes, it's uncomfortable, but you can do this. You can take a deep breath and talk to people. And if anything gets very weird, I'll make sure that it's okay. Everything's going to be all right. It's going to be all right.
Oh, brother.
I did it. You can do it.
Yeah, but you're also not the one possessed with spirits.
Well, but if you're possessed with spirits, then they should be afraid of you.
I'm preparing myself for what could be a bad outcome based on past experiences, but I also know that it's the final step that I need to take to peacefully leave Cairo with no regrets.
When you have difficult conversations, it is imperative to do it well, and you can do it well. There's several tips. So one thing is knowing why you want to do it, because you don't always have to have final conversations. You don't always have to have confrontations. We don't want to avoid every confrontation just because it's uncomfortable, but we don't have to have every conversation. You always have to ask the question, if you want to do it well, what do I want to get out of this? Why am I doing this? And most of the time when we feel hurt or anxious or whatnot, what we want from the other person is to be validated, to be nurtured, to hear an apology. That's what we really want. But if that's what you want, the other person has power over you. And two, you can't control that, which means you'll probably be disappointed. They might say, I'm sorry. They might fall on their knees, but they might not at all. They might just re-hurt you all over again. And so you can tell, because I know she's been to counseling, you can tell when she says these things, why she's doing it. Someone's walked her through this before. She said, it's the last thing I do to make sure that I have no regrets. So she's saying, I want something for me. I'll regret this if I don't say it. So this is for me. And I bet for her, it's just, I just want to say it. Just saying it is enough for me. I don't need to hear anything from them, just saying it. If that's what you need, then do it. But if you're doing it so only if someone says something in response, you're needing too much for them.
I've not seen their faces in 2 years, and their faces still haunt my dreams. So I'm in it now. All right, this is good. I'll knock on the door.
I like this in the spouse relationship at this point, where I like he gets out of the car and he watches. It's very kind. Now, obviously, she's not going to go see Bigfoot here, but she's afraid. She's anxious to have what she thinks is going to be a confrontation, or possibly confrontation. And it's very nice of him to stand out there and be present. But she can still do her own business because she's not in danger. If she were actually in danger, I know he, and a normal, healthy Christian man, would be there to help her. But he's present, but not all up in her business, and that's very healthy.
Can I talk to Kim and Barry outside for a sec?
Sure.
When I heard the doorbell and realized who it was, there was a little bit of like, ooh, because I feel like she's here to say something bad.
Funny how this is actually, she immediately gets to the child ego state right away because she's scared. She's scared of being criticized. She's terrified of being criticized. We've seen all these seasons. And so immediately when she's scared, she's anxious, she pets herself a lot. So she'll pet her hair a whole lot here. And then Barry, the husband, he has the usual face. He does a lot of faces. So he'll make the eyebrow face here a lot when he's nervous too. And so she stands back. She's already prepared this and practiced this. She puts her hands together, pulls your shoulders back, and here's the talk.
On out of town.
I know, you're headed to Tampa.
We are, we're moving.
That's pretty good.
And I just wanted to stop by before we left. It's been a long time since I've seen you guys. We're wrapping up loose ends. And I just wanted to say,
I feel like you meant to hurt me. I feel like you meant to ostracize me because you couldn't control me. But at the end of the day, I've worked through that. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. And I forgive you guys.
I'm sorry. Every time his face, sure, good. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of telling a person they hurt me and I forgive them. I'm not a big fan of that. I think there's no real benefit besides just coming across as superior. I mean, I've forgiven many people in my life. They have no idea they offended me because I don't think they need to know, and I got over it, but I'm not a big fan of that.
That's where it stands right now, and even if I don't have a relationship with you, it's not because I'm angry at you. I've worked through that.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
and we've forgiven you, and we're not
thank
bitter.
you.
And we never did mean to hurt you. I mean,
Well,
I'm sorry if it was.
I feel differently,
taken that
but
way.
that's my feelings.
Yeah.
Leaving this with peace over all the drama, so.
Yeah.
Good. Looking through
Yeah, I know they're teasing, but we don't want to do that. It's okay to cry. It's okay to cry.
the window, I can see that it's going pretty well. I can't believe this is actually happening. Like, I can't believe I see Olivia talking to my parents. She has never stepped foot on this property before.
You guys once told me if I made things right with you, I could see the kids again. Yeah. This is me making things right, and I'd like to say goodbye to the kids.
Sure.
I don't want to be watched like I'm a convict. I'd like to have a second alone with them. Won't say a word about you, I promise.
No,
Sure.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Sounds good to me.
Would you let me hug you?
I'd prefer not to have a hug, but thank you.
That's okay, but let's have fun in Tampa.
Yeah, it's gonna be a different life, I guess.
Yeah, little things like, yeah, ideally you don't want to come at this as a child ego state, which she obviously is. So she has anger, and I understand. We said, like, I want to be watched like I'm a convict. Ideally, you want to have these conversations when you're in your adult ego state. So ideally, you're not so. You don't want to sound sarcastic. You don't sound wounded. Like when she knocked on the door and said, "Can I speak with you outside right now, please?" And that's weird. So it's just more normal to say, "Hey, how you doing? Good," and come here and chat with them. And is it possible if I can chat with the kids just by myself? You just make your request, because anything like I'm a convict, whatever, it accuses them of something. You don't want to do that. Here they handle that well because they could have easily said, "We don't look at you like a convict." That's a stupid thing to say, and that starts an argument. So you do want to leave any kind of accusations explicitly out of the conversation if possible. Well, that's how that talk went. So here's up next. Now we have Kim opens up to Micah over drinks. She's about to say something. I know what it is.
So I'm back visiting family and friends, and I'm staying in Thomasville, Georgia. And I asked my mom to come out and have some drinks with me tonight. When I was little, my mom never drank. It wasn't until recently that I found out she was drinking occasionally. And hell, I thought that would be really fun to have a drink with my mom. I've never done that. Never thought I would be doing that. Hey.
Hey. How's it going? Ooh, good to see you.
I like your dress. You want us to sit here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing where a person who spent so many years confined to very, very particular norms, don't drink sugar, I mean, all that stuff, and all of a sudden, because the kids started experiencing, and of course she already lives vicariously through her children, and now she all of a sudden does it. It's difficult if you're a child not to see it as, I mean, I know they're happy, but that's profoundly hypocritical. And they say this, of course, later on when they go through the divorce. It's like, you've spent all my life saying that marriage is forever. We're never going to break up. And this is, you can get over anything, and we need work communication. And then it's difficult. There'd be a profound explanation on this. It's just very unhealthy.
So are you actually drinking tonight?
Yeah.
What do you want?
I was gonna have a margarita, but what's that? That looks good.
This is a Clark Kent. I think it's I want to say a gin. Take a sip out of the cup.
Out of the cup. Margarita. Barry is pretty firmly, anti-alcohol of any kind, except for kombucha. Being his wife all of these years.
It's always Barry's fault. Anytime she ever is seen as closed-minded or domineering, it's Barry's fault.
I just kind of supported that and went along with everything that he said. I don't think he really knows that I, am having an occasional drink here and there.
Hey, cheers to our first drink together.
Cheers.
Yeah, she very much treats Barry as a disapproving parent, but that disapproving parent is in her mind, but she projects that upon Barry. Now, in the real world, he might be that way, but on these films, he is not at all. But she always assumes Barry is displeased or looking down or judging her, and she's just trying to be, she's finally free to be herself, and that's ridiculous.
How long have you been drinking again? Not meaning that in like a bad way, because sometimes people, that kind of sounds like judgmental or whatever.
Yeah, I started seeing myself as individual, distinct from him.
When I first heard about my mom and dad separating, that was a huge shock. And I just kind of realized that I didn't know them very well, and I didn't spend as much time as I would like to with them.
Right, which is their fault. You have a bunch of kids, it's their fault for that. And this whole, the narrative that she has about I'm free from him and I'm finally being my own free self and my own desires it's sad and gibberish.
I guess where I'm at right now is, I've lived a life the last 20-some years of abstaining from almost everything. And now I kind of feel like, you know what? I know God. God knows me. I'm saved. Life's short. It's okay to have some fun.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at now.
I wonder where those thoughts were for the last 20 years. Why is it that it takes the kids leaving and they're drinking and dressing like the way they do and all that stuff? Why is it all of a sudden now I realize I'm saved and it's time to have fun? Notice what she didn't say is, I know God, I gave my life to Jesus, I surrender to him, he's my Lord, I want to make him happy because he saved me from hell, and I want to have fun, I'm just doing it a Christian way. And I realized that there are a lot of stipulations I had that simply weren't biblical and they weren't Christian. And I'm very, very sorry for that. I implemented rules upon you in parenting that were unnecessary. Instead, it's this, what people do, they just kind of throw their hands up and say, hey man, me and God, we're cool, we're chill, we know what's going on, and it's time to, life is short. Well, life is short, and that works for pedophiles and rapists and gangsters. Life is short, so do whatever you want to do. See, the shortness of life doesn't mean things become moral that are immoral. That's ridiculous. And so it's one thing to say life is short, I'm going to try my best to understand God the best I can and obey him the best I can. It's nothing to use that as a warrant to do immoral things. Drinking is not immoral, getting drunk is. And so when she's sitting there across her son, who's apparently drinking very heavy alcohol, who's about to get buzzed or inebriated to a degree, instead of going, son, I love you, and drinking is not bad itself, but please don't get drunk, but not anymore, right? This is now all set free from the rules. And this is what happens when people grow up with stringent rules for which there is no legitimate or good explanation for something. They rebel. And that's why we don't do this. People don't rebel when they don't feel like they live in a prison all the time. They don't.
I feel like I have the freedom now to go out and have a drink with you, for example.
You didn't feel like you had freedom to do that before?
No.
Even if you, did you ever talk to Dad about,
Well, I just knew how he felt.
But you didn't bring up, this is what I would like to do?
No. And I really, it's not that I was sitting at home going, oh, I really want to drink and I can't. Because I really didn't, I never even thought about it.
Did you ever, talk to Dad much about the way you were feeling about certain things before you?
Like anything. That's a fantastic question. Did you communicate with my father? Did you talk?
I don't know, that you weren't happy, you wanted to do.
Yeah, I started talking to him about it after I kind of put some pieces together, And the thing is, Dad is really hard to connect with emotionally. And that's what I'm realizing I'm craving. I'm craving a real connection to somebody.
I agree with you. He is hard to connect with.
Yeah, because he comes across as maybe some Asperger's, some kind of autism. He doesn't seem very emotionally bonded. He's a nice guy. But difficult doesn't mean impossible. Secondly, why would that be grounds for divorce? And why have they not talked about this? And how many therapists have they been through? And how many workshops have they gone to? And so what happens is we take this victim disposition of, he's just hard to connect to, and what am I going to do? I've got to divorce him and run off and go find someone else.
I kind of feel like now, especially with what's going on, he's making more of an effort to be open and being able to, easier to talk to, I guess. Yeah. As little kids, we used to beg to ride in the truck with our dad when he would take the trash out. You know, it was like a 5-mile ride to the dumpster. I remember so many times I wanted to ask him something, but I was little and I was like, didn't have the nerve to ask him. I just feel like communication was really bad in our family. And I feel like both of our parents have realized that now, and they're definitely trying to work on it. And all of us kids are too.
Well, hey, man, we all make mistakes, that's for sure. And fathers and mothers are supposed to do what they can to make sure communication is fostered. Of course, parents can't make children not feel scared. We just do the best job we can to talk to them and be open. Not everyone has that skill set. So what we can do is learn what we can when we can, and then do the best job we can. That's for sure. Absolutely.
Now it's just trying to understand what happened to you and Dad. What were your stories?
Yeah.
And what made you raise us the way you did? You have anything you want to tell me about? Or?
I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff.
As soon as she's asked questions about why she's done what she's done on all of the series, she immediately gets very, very shy and reserved and defensive. Again, she goes right to her child ego state. And that's because she lives in that child ego state. She's either rebelling or fussing or pouting, or she jumps to the critical parent when she's domineering. But that's very common. It's a common dynamic of people to go from critical parent to critical parent to child. They jump back and forth. And those are really the only two parts of them that really exist. And so instead, as soon as he asks the question, I don't know, I mean, different ways, I'm gonna mess with my straw and I'm gonna pet myself, instead of just going, because that's the child ego state. I'm not making fun of her. I'm that the child ego state kind of wants to go, versus, I mean, you still are nervous and go, that's a good question. Why did we do that? Well, here are the reasons why. And then this explains it. But instead she feels attacked, or she's feeling like she's got to defend herself. But what he's asking these are fair questions.
I just want to connect with him, and I want him to kind of understand more where I'm coming from and understand more about his childhood. I don't want to burden them with that information when they're really young. And then when they get older, there comes a point where I feel like they're ready to hear it, and I'm ready to talk with them about it. And really that hadn't happened until tonight. It's uncomfortable.
And see, it's another of a billion examples with her. She didn't say, I really want him to feel and to be heard and to understand where I'm coming from. I want him to make sure he's heard and that he knows I love him and I'm proud of him and I own if I made mistakes. Instead, I want him to understand where I'm coming from. That is, I need something from him. She is constantly in the need relationship, constantly need-based. That's the child ego state. I need something from him. And so even when he's asking, well, I want you to get me. But that's not what he wants. He wants an explanation.
I mean, there were several things, but one thing that is kind of big in terms of how it affected me is when I was 4 and 5, my mom, who was a single parent and doing the best that she could, hired a babysitter to watch me. And he was a teenage boy. And I can just say, when you have little girls, the last thing you want is for them to be at the wrong place at the wrong time and have something happen. So that was a regular thing for me growing up. From, just 4 and 5, those ages. If you read the statistics, the people that are most likely to do something like that are people that are close to the family, people that you don't suspect.
That's exactly right. So that's horrible, horrible, horrible that she was molested. It's horrible. It's wretched. It's evil. It's sinful. She did not deserve that. No one deserves that. And that's exactly right. It's close to 90% of people who are the perpetrators are relatives or close friends of the family. That's exactly right. So there's trust involved. And she did not deserve that at all. And hopefully, it doesn't sound like it, man, I don't remember if she's done this. She's not gone to therapy. When you're molested, it brings up, it's, for most people, it is very damaging. It affects your self-esteem. It affects your self-worth. It affects the way you see the world. And then it's especially worse if you tell people or even one person and they discount it. It's your fault. Shouldn't have done that. I was counseling a person today, a young woman, and she said, when I told the person caretaker who raised her, she said, how could you do this to me? When she said I was raped. I mean, that's one of the stupidest responses I've ever heard to someone being raped. How egocentrically selfish and stupid is that to say that to someone? So this is horrible, horrible, horrible. Now, being molested doesn't mean you're a domineering wife who ruins your marriage. So that's the thing here. My follow-up would be, I'm so very sorry you went through that. Can you help me understand how what occurred to you to 4 and 5-year-old has to do with why you parented me? She might say, why I wanted to keep you safe. I want to make sure I never let you ever experience pain. To which I'd say, I understand that motivation, but that is not wise at all, because instead what you do is you ruin her character. And that's a common thing, is the pendulum goes so far away. I was hurt. I want no one else to be hurt, so I will make sure they never get hurt. They'll never be exposed to the world ever, which means they're not prepared for the world.
I chose to tell Micah tonight some things about some abuse that I experienced, when I was a child. Hopefully he'll have a little more understanding of who I am and how I came to parent like I did. I feel like I processed this a long time ago, but it's just more, helping Micah have some understanding.
Yeah, I don't believe you at all. If you process that, you would not have raised your kids that way. You would have said, what happened to me in childhood is not going to affect my being overprotective of my children. That doesn't follow at all.
That was why I always knew where they were, what they were doing, who they were with, whatever. That played a very large part in me being protective, maybe overprotective. But to me, the risk of not being overprotective enough is so great that I'd rather err on the side of overprotecting than under and have something like that happen.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I didn't know. It hurts hearing this, but I'm glad she's telling me. It gives me more of an understanding of who she is as a person and the way she raised us, the rules she had, and the walls she had built. It's like a penny drop moment when soon she told me all the pieces fit together. I guess I only realized, my dad's reasoning, is I thought it was all out of religion.
Yeah.
That's all that was talked about.
Right, because I wasn't going to tell you the other when you're little.
I kind of figured when I was 17, 18, I kind of realized that, there had to have been something that I'd never heard about that made you raise us the way we were, but I never heard what it was. So.
Yeah. My motivation was to protect the children and to raise them in a wholesome environment. Every parent makes the best choices that they can, given what they have to work with. And I'm no different.
Hey, I'm glad you came out tonight.
Well, he did a good job responding. I like the first thing out of his mouth was, I'm sorry. That's compassionate. I wish he'd have said a little more, but he did a good job being with her instead of maybe drilling with her more questions or, fussing her and so forth. I'm glad he said, I'm sorry. And when someone tells you this kind of stuff, you do want to say things like, I'm very, very sorry. You didn't deserve that. That breaks my heart. And now he said more to the camera in the talking head moment. And that's good. But that's exactly what we should do. We should be there with him a moment. That's a very terrible thing to which to go, and it's a very scary thing to tell anybody. And I counsel people, sometimes they waited 10 years to tell anybody because they were so scared. So it's a big deal. And it is true what she said about we do the best job we can. Most parents do. That's exactly right. If you're the kind of person who has been hurt, molested, taken advantage of, abused, in any kind of form or fashion, and you're a parent, I implore you, I exhort you not to allow those wounds to make decisions for you. And this is why, for several reasons. But one is when you're wounded, you're coming from a place of woundedness in your child ego state. Children, literally and metaphorically, the child ego state, children can't parent. And they can't. They're not good parents at all. And secondly, children are very unwise. They're very unwise because this means to be a child. So we want to make decisions based on the adult ego state, the ego state that is wise and takes in irrelevant data and then makes decisions appropriately. But we don't want to let our children make decisions for us. The little child inside of us says, I don't want to work. I want to go eat ice cream and go home or go watch a movie. And I'm bored. I don't want to be here. And the adult ego state might say, yeah, I hear you. Let's go do it. Or, no, we need to get this project finished and then we'll eat ice cream later. Or we'll see how many calories we have left for the day and we'll make a decision. Or maybe we'll have ice cream on Saturday when we do the cardio. My point is the adult needs to make the decisions. And so it's very unwise to make decisions from a wounded place. Very, very unwise. Secondly, of course, in your efforts to, or second, third, where my numbers are, another reason why it's unhealthy to do that is because you then, of course, affect negatively the character of all the children you're raising. You teach them to be scared, and they will pick up on that even implicitly in your parent, as a parent, your body language, what they can cannot do. It teaches them that the world is completely scary. And the world itself is not scary. The world itself is not a danger. It's potentially dangerous, but it's not dangerous. But that's not what children believe when they've been raped or molested or hurt. They come to see the world as scary, particularly when it comes to caretakers who are taking advantage of them, parents, relatives, whomever. When they've been abused, molested, hurt, emotionally, physically abused, it teaches that the world is just too unstable. So and that's not true, but that's what they come to believe because they're children and they don't know any better. And they need to be healed. They need comfort. They need compassion. They need to work through therapy. So when you then parent that way, you teach your other children that the world is scary, and they don't need to think that. It's a false belief. It's a cognitive distortion. They should not come to hold the belief that the world is scary. Secondly, they shouldn't come, and this is part B, they shouldn't come to the belief the world is scary and I can't handle it. I can't handle it. That's exactly what they should not learn. They need to learn that the world does have potential dangers, but that I have the character to process and deal with reality as it comes. So when there really is danger, I know how to get out of the way of danger. If I'm not in danger, if I just feel like I am, I can process that. I can process the emotional state and so forth. So that's exactly what should have happened. And I'm glad she, I guess, did her best. But because her best wasn't that great and Barry's wasn't either, it caused all kinds of wounds and communication patterns, and it probably caused the divorce of their kids who don't know how to relate well to their spouses and cause a lot of damage. And that's very unfortunate that the person who took advantage of her has that kind of effect on her entire family. So we'll hope and pray that things do get better for her. Well, that's all for now on this clip. Stay tuned. I have more clips coming. What are your thoughts? Tell me in the comments below. Let me know, and I can't wait to read them. I'll see you next time.